There we go. So now we are recording so everybody can listen to it and their staff can listen to it when they get some breaks. So today, again, as always, we have Reese and myself and Greg. We're both on the phone call today, and what we are going to get into is, there's a couple of, Greg, I know you've talked about, some critical competencies of running your business. And I think one of the critical things of having a successful business that we've talked about in the past has absolutely been the speed of service. Is that correct?
That's right. Speed of service is one of the main things. If you get this thing down, it's one of the key things that will drive your sales up faster than anything.
So what Greg and I were doing was, there's, and I don't mean this in a bad way, but there's a lot of reasons, excuses, and it's not even excuses. There's a lot of obstacles that people have had to overcome to figure out, okay, I understand the concept maybe of speed of service, and maybe they don't exactly understand because some people have a misconception of what that means. And then, though, but how do I make it happen? And so that's what Greg and I want to focus in today on, is that we're going to be rolling out some new materials and actually how to make it happen. So there are some new franchisees that have signed on and that may not know who Greg is. And Greg and I have known each other for years and have been working together for years. He's worked together with me as a vendor through our Mudlet Mail. He's worked with me as a friend and a friend in the industry. He's worked with me at times as a mentor, talking to me about his success. And Greg, you, of course, currently have locations in Georgia and developing locations in Houston and Texas, and you also have locations in Colorado. So what's the total count now?
I don't know. That's 30.
Okay, so he has so many he doesn't know.
Well, I have different brands, so I get confused. It's 30-something stores. We've got
That's
a few
a
more
good enough number.
Yeah, it's been
so Greg
good.
has 30-something stores, and with a new location opening next week in Houston, Texas.
Yes, on the 3rd, Pearland, Texas. We're opening, I think that's our 15th or 16th drivers concept. So we're excited about that one. It's, I think, our last one to open in Houston, and then we're off to Austin, Texas.
Fun. Well,
yeah.
What we are going to get into, and everybody, we do have a future webinar coming up, and also Greg will be at our convention in a month, so we'll get to further this along. But the reason why we wanted to do today was we needed to talk about how to get to this critical thing of how do I accomplish steps of service. Inside of the steps of service, and that's the speed of service. And so inside of the speed of service, everybody's wondering, how do I make it happen? And I need some tools to make it happen. And so some of the things that you're going to see coming up in the future, not today, but in the future, you're going to see some easier to use and implement inspection process and inspection forms. You are going to see a training process of a step-by-step for technicians, for managers, for your team, and how to hold it accountable. And each time that we do another webinar, we'll be going into the next step of this process to kind of help you along. So let's start off with, why in the world is speed of service so critical? Because if our owners don't buy into it, of course, our team's not going to buy into it. So, Greg, I'm going to let you start off of this. Why is this so critical to the success of an automotive shop?
Well, believe it or not, our customers do not want to be at our shop. And so a typical customer, especially a first-time customer, will come to your shop to get an oil change or an emissions test if you're in an emissions area, or a flat tire. And, typically if you're an oil change customer or something like that, you're budgeting as a customer about 1 hour of your life to getting your oil changed or an emissions test or something like that. It's usually something small. And so if you, and this is where you hear this in the industry, if somebody comes in for an oil change and they see you moving very quickly to get their car pulled around, to get it checked out. And if you can get back to that customer within 10 minutes, what we have found is you're going to close a lot more sales off of those little low dollar ticket items than if it takes more than 10 minutes. In fact, the numbers drop right off because if you think about a customer, they're sitting in the waiting room and all they're thinking about is, hey, I've got to be out of here at 2 o'clock or whatever. They give themselves an hour. Well, if you come right back to them and you try to sell them something that, and a lot of times a flush or something like that, something that can be done in that same hour, you stand a great chance of getting it. But if you wait until about 20 after, where they're sitting in there for 15 or 20 minutes, customer, all they're thinking about is, man, I got to get out of here. And so that's where the industry gets confused, and they'll label somebody like that a bottom feeder, which bottom feeders is really, they're not bottom feeders. It's just an example of poor service. And so you have to change that mentality that most people out there have towards those small ticket items.
Mhm. And I know that we've talked about last week, or the last webinar, we talked about, how today's business, it's all about oil changes. It's not about repairs anymore. It's definitely changed, especially in the last 10 years. So if the customer is not wowed today, and if it takes an hour to 2 hours today on this small job, then one of the things that we're looking at is, are they going to come back next time for even their oil change? No, they can probably go somewhere else because they can get it done faster somewhere else. There was nothing that wowed them. Also, if I did have a big job that needed to be done, and Greg, I know you have a great example on this, and you've shared it with us before, and that was when even your neighbor took their brake job somewhere else in the past. I remember you telling me that story. For the fact of, he was like, oh, well, you're so blown out with your oil changes and being able to get that done, I knew you wouldn't be able to get to this brake job because that was the customer's perception.
Yeah, the customer's perception is if you don't have time to do something simple, then you're sure not going to have time to do something that's a bigger job. They don't realize that shop owners are turning away the simple jobs so that they can get the big money-making big jobs. That just doesn't compute to a customer. So I actually had that happen to me, with a customer of mine that turned away. We turned an oil change away at our store. And so when I went to see him, I didn't know that. He said, I asked him how he was doing, and he said, I'm doing fine. He said, I got new brakes put on my car. And I said, well, how did we do? And he said, oh, I didn't take it to you guys. When I went there to get an oil change, you guys were blown out, so I knew you wouldn't have time for a brake job. And that is the real perception out there. So if you're turning people away and telling them to come back, can you come back in 2 or 3 hours, or can you come back till tomorrow? You're really turning away the future big jobs that you could get if you just took care of this customer on the front side.
Mhm. Now, another thing that this definitely ties into, and a lot of people haven't tied it back to the reasoning behind it, but you always hear how, we're on this roller coaster. I was slammed today, and then you know what? Yesterday, and today we haven't seen a car in. It's 10 a.m., and, we've only had 1 or 2 cars in here. We were slammed yesterday. And you and I have talked about how does speed of service affect that up and down roller coaster? How does it affect being busy today and dead tomorrow?
Well, and this is a great point. When we talk about speed of service, that's speed of service on the front side. It doesn't mean speed of service, I've got to hurry up and get this person out of here on the back side. And so the way that you prevent having these very busy days and then days where you're dead and busy days where you're dead, that all comes in how you prioritize your business, your customers coming in. For example, in our shops, we believe that the customer coming through the front door is our priority. And because of that, even if our bays are completely full with broke cars, we will push a car out of a bay to check in an oil change. And that runs counter to what the industry, especially technicians, believe. They believe that you should get those jobs done that are already in there. Well, in my world, those jobs are already sold. And so if you don't want to be dead tomorrow, you have to sell all day long, every car that comes in, and not be as concerned about when the car leaves. And so what happens, and we've tracked this in my own stores, which is if you look, and you might try it at your stores, you guys that are out there, is look at how much of your sales happens before 2 in the afternoon. And then look how it falls off from 2 until close. And the reason for that is your technicians get busy, especially on busy days. They get busy. If it's slow, they want to go home, so they don't want to work after 2 o'clock. So, cars will come in. You'll still get quite a few cars that'll come in if you're not turning them away, but very little sales on those tickets. It'll be almost no upsells unless it's just luck. And we found that. So we consider a day like 2 days. Open till 2 is one day, and 2 to close is the next day. So we built a day within a day because we realized we were turning things away and not really living the standard of the customer coming through the front door is the priority. When you do that, you will have plenty of sales carrying into the next day so that you never have this, well, not never, but you will greatly reduce the number of days where you have 20 cars one day and then 6 cars the next day. And that's, you've got to sell all day long on those busy days.
So when we're looking at our repair orders, what we've definitely found is in the morning, you usually have a much higher average repair order in the morning because they're upselling on those jobs, they're following the systems, and then by the end of the day, they're just trying to get all those repair jobs done. So those oil change customers that walked in at the end of the day, they turned them away because they were finishing up those repair jobs. They didn't do that. And then even if they took the oil change customer in, they certainly didn't try to upsell the work, or they tried to put the upsells off, or the additional repairs or broken eyes that need to be done, pushed them off. Didn't offer the customer, of course, let me get you home, let's get it taken care of. So we really challenge you as an owner to do this audit. Check and look at your average repair order and your number of upsells and your number of oil change customers that are coming in the beginning of the day versus the end of the day, that 2 to 6. And then also challenge yourself on those oil change customers that come in at the end of the day, take them in and then try to sell jobs for that time period for the next morning. So you're ready to go and busy the next morning. Is that a concept that you've used in the past?
Well, I would also get with the technicians. And technicians, in my experience, has been, an A technician will get 40 or 50 hours a week or above. A B technician will get 30 to 40, that type of deal. And a technician's pretty consistent. So in other words, if you got a technician that flags 40 hours a week, he probably always flags 40 hours a week. The way you adjust that with technicians is you get with them at the beginning of the week and say, let's see how fast we can sell you 40 hours this week. That changes the whole mentality. It's not how fast can they go, because see, a technician will think, I've got to flag 8 hours today. See, and then once they get their 8 hours, then they kind of lay down and go, well, I've got my 8 hours. I'm done for the day. And what we want to do is sell that guy 20 hours, 25 hours in a day. Get him more hours than he can possibly get done. That also helps you in staffing, where a lot of times you need to add a technician, but you're not able to because this technician saying, hey, I'm not even that busy. Well, he's not that busy because you don't realize how much work you're turning away. This is such an important webinar because I bet most managers or owners are thinking, oh, we don't turn anything away. And to be clear, and this gets into speed of service, it really is what sums up this deal, is that if you really listen in at your front counter, you just camp out there, for a day or two and just watch all day long from open to close, I think you'll be absolutely floored at how much business you turn away because they don't want to disturb a technician or they think it's a bottom feeder. This is so revolutionary. If you really zero in on saying yes and having speed of service, you just can't even believe how much it'll change your business. I just can't stress that enough.
And when you're saying that, knowing that it's true, is just to give you the last 2 weeks of shop visits that I've done. One of them, I was standing behind the counter. Customer walked with an oil change. This customer was begging. She had a critical issue going on with her vehicle. They said that they could not take her in, and it was 5 to 5:30. There was 2 technicians in the back of that shop who had not left yet. So bare minimum, could we have taken her on a road test? Could we have found out the problem? Could we have given her a ride home? Yes. But instead they said, well, we can make you an appointment for in the morning because we're getting ready to leave. So that was an obvious turned away, and that would have been a very large job. The other one is just in the past 2 weeks going through and doing invoice reviews. I haven't been to a shop in the past couple weeks that I've ever gone in where I have not seen either inspections. They were pencil whipped. A great example is that, it's got 145,000 miles on that car, and I look at it and you didn't find one thing on that car. That car is in that good a shape, and it's got 145,000 miles on it. It was the first time it ever came in. It's a hard one to believe. And then the other one is where you see items written up on the inspection, but it's not even showing up on the invoice or under declined services or anything. So you have to understand that it never even was presented to the customer. So definitely.
And that's the worst, Reese. If you have stores that are turning over technicians, that one that you just said is a common problem I see all over the country, which is a technician's writing up stuff and then it's never presented to the customer. What the negative impact that does and lack of morale it does for the store is it's unbelievable, because you got to remember, a technician will start to lose confidence in that front counter manager because he's like, well, I'm writing this stuff up and the guy isn't selling anything. If he found out that you weren't even presenting it to the customer, that's what causes turnover. As a technician, remember, part of the benefits, and I think we touched on this, you were in my office last week.
Mm-hmm. Yep,
and you've seen my staffing. I don't have one opening for a technician in this city. And I'm open on Sundays. Most people would say there's no way you could stay staffed on, and being open 7 days a week when there's other shops out there closed on the weekends. But we are, because one of the biggest benefits to our technicians is the fact that our managers can sell. That's more than vacation time, more than anything else, is the sales process. Speed of service is the start of the sales process. In fact, it's really where the sale's made. It's just how fast you move. So that is that one that you pointed out on not even presenting it to the customer is just cancer for your store. It will absolutely destroy you. So please, if you're an owner or a general manager, zero in on that and make sure it's not happening to you.
So now let's go into the actually talking about, you were talking about earlier, what is speed of service? And I just want to give you some of the examples, Greg, of what I hear out there when I say, because we talk about just say yes, and sometimes people misconstrue what is that. Then a lot of times, though, people also misconstrue what is speed of service. Does that mean how fast I do a full inspection? Does that mean how fast I do the full oil change? Does that mean how fast I take this customer and get them into the lobby? Everybody, many people out there, of course, understand what it is, but I don't think that before we dive into this that it's a bad idea to really talk about what is speed of service and what is the most important thing about that customer's perception with the speed of service. So I'm going to turn that over to you so you can kind of talk about really what is it.
Okay. Well, the speed of service, just like I said earlier, is the very first part of what we call the sale, the meet and greet. And so if you use that term, meet and greet, that means that imagine a customer pulling into the parking lot, and as they walk up to the store, a manager is there to open the door for the customer. That right away sends a message versus a manager waiting, standing behind the counter till somebody comes up and then ignoring them for a few seconds just to let them know they're being a problem. Once a customer comes in, ask them, how can I help you today? And they're going to say, well, I'm here to get an oil change. Oh, okay, absolutely. The minute they say that, you call the back and make sure you call in front of them to say, hey, whoever your back of the house guy is, hey, Jeff, can you please come around? I've got a customer up front. The general service or technician is going to come up and grab the keys and get in and say, hey, they need an oil change. The fact that you're moving while you're filling out the paperwork, the speed of the first 5 minutes of just talking to that customer, anybody that knows anything about sales in this industry knows that sale's already made right there. Because when a customer sees you moving your ass, when they're coming in, that you're not just standing there like a lump, they now when you come to them in 10 minutes to do a show and sell, and you have something like a flush, they're going to say absolutely, because they can see how fast you're moving. They know they're not going to get stuck there all day. The best part about speed of service is this your chance to show off. Our biggest sell, and my favorite, is when a customer comes in for an oil change and all of our bays are full. And they see us push a car out of a bay and pull their car in real quick. Customers notice that. So when they see you going through a little bit of trouble to pull their car in, they go, wow, that's that wow factor, that wow experience, because nobody does that. Instead, they tell you to come back later. You can't pull that off without good communication with the technicians in the back. Everybody in your store has to understand what speed of service looks like. And remember what I said at the start of this webinar. You can't have speed of service if you don't understand the priorities of your shop. The priorities are either one of two things. The car is already in the shop. That's not speed of service. That's slow service. Or the customer coming in through the front door. If you say the customer coming through the front door, you should never tell a customer they have to come back or come back in the morning. If you're saying that, you're leaving money on the table because you are a guy or a gal that believes in the customers that are already there are the priority. And if you think that way, you're going to be very limited in this field. You're just never going to make the big money that you have the potential of making if you change that view. So everybody has to know, if a technician knows and understands that, listen, in our shop, there's the customer coming through the front door takes precedent over the customers that are already here. And the reason for that is the customers that are already here, that we've already sold their jobs, those tickets are sold. So the only way that we can get you more money and more hours is to sell on customers coming in. If we wait and if we don't, then we're only going to be limited to what you can handle today. And that's going to limit you. That causes all the problems in these shops is not getting the priority right. Once you get the priority right, you'll always have cars carrying over to the next day. So speed of service, very clearly, that first 5 minutes when a customer is there, it's getting back once the customer sits in the waiting room within 10 minutes. Once you've sold the job, then the priority switches to the next customer coming in through the front door. And the nice thing about it is, if you have 10 or 15 customers that you've sold jobs to, you get to prioritize which cars get done. What we do is, when we sell a job, is we'll say, listen, if the parts are available, I don't see any reason why we can't get your car done by close tonight. If a customer says, well, I won't pick it up till tomorrow, well, then we push that car out. It goes into the driveway until all the other cars that need to go today get finished and get wrapped up. So sometimes you see people in shops working on cars that the customer they don't even need that day, but they'll turn away other jobs because they just want to get that big job finished. So it's got to be the priority from the owner, which is mission critical. Just like you, Reese, when you're in, you've noticed that. When a manager is telling a customer to come back in 3 hours, then you know, as Honest One, this franchisee his priority is the car's already in the shop. That's the same franchisee that's going to say, God, Reese, I'm not making any money. Or that, gosh, I don't know how to get my sales up, or I can't hire a good technician. All of those things. Or
my car count's declining.
All of that is a byproduct of not prioritizing the customer coming through the front door. It's, no matter how I say it, it's really hard to come across. People don't really understand the full value until they actually try it. So if you're seeing yourself or your store having those issues where we're having to turn people away, or a technician gets pissed off because you're asking him to do an oil change when he's focused on another car. All of that is communication. If the technicians know on the front side that, hey, we've sold you those 8 hours, we need to sell you another 8 for tomorrow. We got to, and the only way we're going to do that is you got to be able to get off that car and check out these other cars when they come in. So hopefully I've made that clear enough.
So everybody, we just want to make sure this means that customer walks in and we find out why they're here. We get somebody immediately up front and move that car around. So if the car is still sitting in front of that customer in 10 minutes, that is not speed of service. That is actually an angry customer, and that's a customer that's probably not going to be buying anything from you and probably not going to be coming back again. So the next thing is having a 45-minute telling the customer, can you get me in for oil change? Absolutely. We'll work you in, and 45 minutes later, customer's still sitting there with the car sitting out front. That is not speed of service. Getting the customer their results back from the initial inspection in 30 minutes was not speed of service. So that's what all of this means, is keeping these customers coming back to you because you wowed them, and the only way we're going to wow them is through this. The next thing is, if you don't, and I've seen this time and time again, and Greg was one of the ones, who I initially, I've done it at Greg's shop. I promise I have stood in his shop with a stopwatch in my hand to time it when I've been working at some of his shops. And I told the guys I was doing it, the guys at the front. And what we would do is, and I've done it at our shops multiple times, is I time to see from the time that customer walked in the front door, not any other time, not from the time it gets to the bays, not from the time that you get through checking them in, not from it's from the time they walk in the door to the time that that initial inspection comes back up to the customer and you take them out to do the show and sell at the car, that safety of that broken item. You want to look at how long does that take. And I can promise you I've done it time and time again where I've asked the manager, okay, how long did you think that took? And they'll say, oh, that was only about 10 or 15 minutes. And I was like, actually, I timed it, and that actually took exactly 32 minutes. That took 22 minutes. Very rarely have I seen it. Many times when I ask them that means I'm asking them because it's probably not what they thought it was. They underestimate what they think that number is. So, Greg, what does it mean to really, how long does it take? And what happens if you're not timing your people and you're not testing this? What are you going to see as far as your results?
Well, just what you pointed out, and we have the same issue. That's why we use the timers, is because perception and reality at the front counter are just far different things. Managers get busy. Yeah, managers get busy and they get distracted and they think it's only been 5 minutes or 10 minutes, and it's always about double that time. And for a customer, it feels like even double the time that they were really there because they don't want to be there. And so, remember when I started this, I said, while you're taking in the customer's information, somebody else needs to take the keys and pull the car around. You just earned yourself a sell if you do that. If you wait till the customer, if the car is parked, you wait till they get in the waiting room, takes 5 or 10 minutes to get their car pulled around, you might as well just do the oil change and lose your $5 on the oil change and send it down the road because you're not going to sell anything. So, and it's funny, we talked about this, and I get this at Gary Gunn's events and things where people want to negotiate with me on the time, which I'm not the one you have to negotiate with. The customer, through just years of testing, trying to figure out how we could increase our ticket average on oil changes and emissions tests, we found, really by accident, that the faster we got back to the customer, the higher the sales. And so we just kept working that down so that we know that if you get back to that customer within 10 minutes, you have a high likelihood of getting a sale. It's about a 50-50 chance. It's still not 100% because you got some people that just, no matter what, they are limited on time. They're maybe just there during their lunch break. But if I can sell 4 or 5 out of 10, that is it's kind of like a high baseball average. That's what I'm looking for. Sometimes people don't understand that is good. That you're not always going to going to sell something on every single car, but you stand the best chance. If you don't, you're only going to sell maybe 2 or 3 out of 10. So the difference is maybe 1 or 2 more sales happen through speed of sale, through speed of service, but it could change your sales for a store $10,000 to $15,000 in a month, which for a lot of stores, that's the difference between making a profit and losing money or breaking even. So
And that's a huge point.
well, it is. It's, and if you're an owner, my God, I mean, just all your profit is made in the cars that are turned away. See, if you're breaking even or not making much money, it's because everybody else in your shop's getting paid. They're getting paid enough that they're happy. If they weren't happy, they'd quit. That extra push that we're talking about is your money. That's the money that we need you making so that you're profitable. So it's the best part of the job, and it's one of the funnest things, because once people realize that speed of service works, then you get really good at it. You know, one of the things that we did to help with speed of service is that when a customer comes in and we pull the car around, we don't write an estimate. When we find...
Yeah, and we're getting to that in just a minute, Greg, yeah.
I'm getting ahead of myself. Okay.
So when we were talking about timing the people, we want to make sure our service writers know what their goals are and what their time is, the technicians and the inspection process. And then we have done, inside of Honest One, we've done testing and looked at what our percentages were. Not to say that they're, the best or the greatest. It's just, it is what it is, so you might as well share it. So with the ones that were actually presenting it within 10 minutes or less, they actually had about a 30 to 40% chance of a good upsell most of the time. When it went to 15%, we found that it dropped to less than 20% chance of a sale. And at 20 minutes or more, and these are on the first-time customers, let me make that clear too, and at 20 minutes past, it was less than a 10% chance of an upsell in many of our stores. So that's why timing it. So I wanted to make sure that we cover what are your options. You can do stopwatches where we put a stopwatch in the bag, or you have a stopwatch right there at the counter. We also have put timestamps, and you can see here I have a red arrow pointed on both of our inspection sheets where we write in as soon as you're checking in this customer and you're writing it down to give this inspection immediately to the technician so he can pull the car around. We're writing in at least one way to track it is time dispatched, or you can see on our second inspection form where it says time in. So when that first item gets brought back to us, I'm looking at the time return so you can start to see as an owner, if they're not writing that in, you need to force them to write that in because you have a right to know how long is it taking to get that initial process back to my customer. That's your dollars. So make sure you're holding them accountable when you're doing your invoice reviews that they're writing in time in and when did they bring that first item back, time return. We could do a time stamp easily. Everybody's got them. Most people have them out in the shop. Egg timer, you turn the egg timer on behind the counter, and you can time it that way. So there's a lot of different ways. Is there any other ones that you've used in the past, Greg? I think your favorite one is a timestamp or stopwatch, isn't it?
Yeah, I like the timestamp, and I like to audit using a stopwatch. But here's the thing. This will not happen if the owner is not heavily involved in pushing this. You can't get people to self-regulate without there to either being some incentive through personal recognition, but because an employee is just not going to get it. They're just not going to go. They're not going to see the value because remember what you said. Okay, and this is how naive people can get. You said if we get it within 10 minutes, it's a 30% sale. If it's after 20 minutes, it's below a 10% sale. Well, we get about 40%, but that means I'm going to have 6 customers say no. I'm going to do everything right, and they're still going to say no, and I'm going to have 4 that says yes. So see, think about that. An employee is going to go, well, gosh, I tried it, it didn't work. I tried it, it didn't work. I tried it, it didn't work. And then you get one. But they give up before that. They don't understand that you get 4 out of 10 versus 1 out of 10. The dollars are staggering. Not to mention the 6 customers that didn't buy something, but we gave them great service. Those are your big tickets in the future. Those are the customers that are going to come back this summer because they had a good experience with you. So that's
or that they're going to come back at all.
Right. So
that's what I'm seeing, and we're going to talk about that in just a minute, is that we're spending, let's say with Mudlick Mail, you're doing 15,000 mailers this month with Mudlick Mail. You spend all this time, all this energy, all this money on getting that first-time customer. And then when that first-time customer has that oil change coupon, it's sitting in their hand, and they're ready to come in with that Mudlick coupon, and they walk in the door, and you say, either can you drop your keys off, can I make you an appointment tomorrow, or that you say, yes, absolutely, we can get you in, but then you don't get me in and you don't get me responses until 45 minutes later. Basically, you took the money, you wadded up all those marketing dollars, and you threw it in the trash, and I don't know why you're wasting it, because Greg, are they going to come back? The next time I need an oil change, or the next time I get that coupon, am I possibly going to be going somewhere else?
There's no way. We hired a company. In fact, as a company that helped Chick-fil-A do a lot of research when they were smaller. We met them, it's been 93. And we hired this company to study our customers and why people don't come back and why people do. And the interesting thing, I've made a lot of money off of this study, is if you sell a customer something outside of an oil change. So if they come in, you have speed of service, and you sell them something, they will come back to you unless they move or go away, even if you piss them off. But if you don't sell them something, so that means if your customer comes in and you give them slow service, you don't take care of them, it's as if they never came into your shop. You stand no better chance of getting them to come back than a place where they've never been before. Other than a cost-conscious customer. You can get them in by doing a $9 oil change or something. But outside of that, so it's mission critical that if you don't sell them on the front side, that you give them such good service that they have no reason not to come back. And it's funny, I've seen this in my own shops, which is, if a customer walks in and says, how long for an oil change, the managers, they almost act like that ticket is not important. But if a customer comes in and says, man, I've got a bunch of grinding going on the front of my car, I heard it was brakes, can you guys check that out? Well, then it's roll out the red carpet. Unfortunately, there's not a lot of those customers walking through the front door. The only way that people are going to make it in the future in this business is being able to sell maintenance items or sell safety items that customers didn't realize that they had by doing a proper inspection. So I just wanted to point that out.
All right, and then now we are going to move on to, if I have to say, the number one thing that I see of why this isn't happening, why it's not working, why people come back and say they can't accomplish it. 100% it is because of the communication, and it's because of either the owner doesn't buy into it or doesn't understand why it is so critical to their loyal customer base and to their upsells and to DeMar's revenues. The technicians don't understand what it's in for them and how to accomplish it, and the managers don't understand. And so that's where it all starts. And so the first place that you have to start before you throw out all of these new tools and all of this is to have a meeting with your team to explain why this is now important to you and how, what's the why, what's in it for me, what's in it for your team, and that's what they need to understand so that you get that buy-in. And the first place that you want to do is you want to start with an apology, and that's where I want to start today with y'all is I want to start out with an apology. I wish that we would have provided you with even more tools sooner to help y'all accomplish this even better. Now we have identified that, everybody understood it, but everybody's having some problems with maybe implementing it here and there. And so what we're going to work on now is to give you the tools and the inspection sheets and those types of things that are going to make it easier for you to implement over the next 2 to 3 months. And I think an apology can just move you up leaps and bounds. So that's a place that you want to start, is to apologize to your staff that says, I'm sorry that we haven't gotten this as a priority. And I'm sorry that that's resulted in us having less upsells and repairs, and that, technicians, y'all been doing oil changes and these full inspections from beginning to end, and when they're not getting upsold, or their managers are getting frustrated that your technicians aren't doing the inspections and getting them back to you in a timely manner, because there's miscommunication on both sides there. So nobody's getting the GP you deserve. The owner's not getting the money that they deserve. And so, what I'm going to do to make it up to you is this is how we're going to move forward. And Greg, when you start out your team, because, there's times where you have new people that I'm sure have worked at other places, and you bring them on board, and you've got to get them to understand. I'm sure they understand by being in the shop for a day, but you got to get their buy-in. When you did this the first time, how do you start out that meeting, and the why? Why is it important to the manager? Why is it important to the tech?
Well, we do it every time we open a store. We got one to open next week, and so we meet with the technicians. Technicians are the ones, you got to remember, what drives the company and what drives people not to do this isn't really the managers not wanting to do it. It's the managers being afraid to talk to the technicians. It's the same deal with an owner. An owner doesn't follow up with this because he knows, Jim Bob back there is going to throw a wrench or get upset if we ask him to do an oil change or to push that car out in the bay. And so the communication all starts with the technicians. And when you explain to them that, man, our job is not to sell you the hours you can handle. It's to sell you more than you can ever possibly finish. See, because here's what it's such, all this ties in together with what makes running a shop suck. What makes a shop suck as an owner is feeling like you're held hostage. Feeling like you can't do anything, you can't say anything because that tech's going to quit out there. Well, you're held hostage because you're not making the priority the cars coming in through the front door. And because the priority is not the cars coming through the front door, what happens is our business is naturally feast or famine. You're blown out one day, and for whatever reason, the next day you're dead. Well, with the day you're blown out, you never make as much money as you could because you're understaffed. And in the day that it's slow, the tech's standing around saying, see, I don't have enough work to do. You can't hire another technician, therefore the owner is held hostage. The franchisee is held hostage to the technicians. Everyone is. So the way you fix that is you explain to the technicians that, hey, our job as a customer is coming in. We're not overly concerned on when that car leaves as much as how fast we check it out. There will be time for you to fix the cars. But if we've got a car walking through the front door or a customer coming through the front door, we've got to stop everything because we owe it to you to sell something on these cars. And the only way we know how to do it is we've got to get it in the shop to sell it. Technicians are surprised, and in fact, you'll look like a genius because they'll go, I've been doing this 20 years. I've never heard anything like that. When they see that it works, well, guess what? They're now your biggest your biggest support because they realize, hey, you guys need to move, get that car pulled around here, or they'll run up because they realize, man, that could be 2 hours worth of 2 flag hours for them. That could be, for some people, it's $60, $70 in their pocket. So they want that car pulled around, and I can't stress enough on where that starts. It's got to start with that communication with the technician. Obviously, the managers then, it's how important those salaried or hourly managers are who's not on commission, or at least not all commission, that, man, the customer comes in here, you got to see how fast you can get that into the shop. If you can do that, then trust me, the managers will want to sell the service. They'll want to be the hero. What really is the cog in the wheel is the technician staff and not communicating to them clearly. And that's what prevents the owner from making money, and it's also what makes this business really suck. If you don't have everybody on the same page, man, this is a tough business. So hopefully this makes sense to everybody.
Yeah, and so I want to make sure my managers are going to understand that this is going to get them their bonuses, it's going to get them a team environment, it's going to get them to their car count goals, It's going to get them to their revenue goals. It's going to get them to their GP goals. They're going to have happy customers, so hopefully they don't have to deal with customer complaints as much. They don't have to deal with as many objections either, because if I wow the customer, they're going to be less likely to have an objection. I'm going to have a fast-paced day, which means I'm not going to be sitting around twiddling my thumbs, which leads to boredom. It's going to be invigorating. And then with my technician side of it, I really have to make sure that they understand how this is going to get them more hours, more of a paycheck, why we put that oil change first, why are we going to push this car out, and the biggest thing I need them to understand is why we're going to stop on that first safety or broken item and come to the front. And so that's how we're going to help them make this happen, because we all understand that a full inspection can't happen from beginning to end and get it done in 10 minutes. And so we're going to get to that in just a minute. So now we're going into, before we start, just a couple of more little things that we want to make sure we do is we need to, and I think we've kind of killed this, Greg, but I'm going to make sure that just in case we need to add something to it that we can, is that we want to eliminate the negative of an oil change to our staff. And we need to make sure our staff understands why that 2-hour oil change customer, if it took me 2 hours to work them in, even if they drop their keys and they say, yeah, I'll be happy to wait if you work me in. But that 2-hour oil change customer, how they're still not going to do an upsell because they're already sitting there thinking, all right, I'm already an hour into this, I'm going to be looking at 3 hours if they actually have to do something on my car, and I'm already planning out my day. And also how car count is really won or lost in the first few seconds of this customer's arrival by showing the sense of urgency, by standing when the customer walks in, by greeting the customer, by all of that. So, Greg, do you want to point out any additionals? I think we've touched on some of this stuff already, but if you want to add anything additional to it.
The only thing that I would highlight on this screen is that the negatives of an oil change, it's negative because of slow service. I can't stress that enough. So the negative becomes a positive in a shop for everyone when you really, really get used to speed of service, because you will sell more. Once a technician sees that, wow, you are going to sell, and you explain to them that, you know what, it's a 40% rule. If we can sell almost 50%, every other one, man, that's worth your time to check out the car. So that, I think we beat this into the ground, but it's just, the word negative in oil change is common in the industry, and it should be a positive, because this is a first-time customer. If you could look ahead 3 years and see that oil change produced you $4,000 over the next 3 years with this customer, it would always be positive oil changes.
Mm-hmm. Now we're going to talk a little bit about the customer's expectations and the how long. So the customer comes in and they got that coupon in their hand. Because truthfully, most of our first-time customers, hopefully they came in due to word of mouth or, through possibly your networking, or their neighbor said, you got to go to this place, they're great, and they say that we're great because we wowed them. And the customer comes in and says, hey, y'all look pretty busy today. How long is it going to be? Can y'all even get me in today for an oil change? And absolutely, great news. We can get you in right now. And that is a great coupon that, you brought in. You're already kind of pre-selling on that. And we're building into it will take about 40 minutes, and there's the 15, 15, 15. So you're laying out what the expectation is. And Greg, I think that's something that you've used in the past, 15 to do the inspection thereon. And so I don't want to steal your thunder, so I'm going to let you turn that over to you, and if you want to kind of explain this whole customer expectation, how long, great news, 15, 15, 15, all of that.
Yeah, when a customer comes in, they're usually dragging along that Mudlick Mail coupon, and with the coupon, it has a inspection, whether it's I don't know if yours is a 20-point or whatever inspection, but we always compliment them. They always come in and say, how long for an oil change? And we say, oh, okay, well, we can get you in right away, and that's a great coupon offer. Let me explain how we do it. That oil change comes with a tire rotation and an inspection. It takes us about 15 minutes to do the inspection, about 15 minutes for the tire rotation, about 15 minutes for the actual oil change. And so what I'll do is I'll go ahead and get this pulled around, and you should already have your manager, tech, or somebody pulling the car around, and we'll do the initial inspection first, then we'll do the tire rotation and the oil change. It'll take somewhere around 30 to 45 minutes to get the whole thing done, and we'll get started on it right now. Customer's happy. Then the job of the manager or the tech and the manager is when they pull it around is to look for that one item. Before you even get into a full-blown inspection, for example, if you open the hood and you see that the serpentine belt's cracked up and it's frayed and it's it's in bad need of repair or replacement, you stop right there because that's a safety item. You ask the customer, hey, do you have just a second? We just pulled the car in the bay. I just wanted to show you something. And so you take them out to the car and say, I just want to make you aware of this. This is your serpentine belt. It's what runs everything on your vehicle, and you see how it's frayed and it's cracked up. That's something that if it breaks, it would leave you on the side of the road, and that needs your immediate attention. A customer's either going to say, oh, well, I don't have time to deal with that today. Or they'll say, well, how much is that? Those are the words that you're looking for, because if they say how much, that's a buyer.
Or how long, either one.
Yes, but most of the time they'll say, well, how much is it? And that's usually their second question is how long whenever you pitch them the job. But what we tell them is, oh, you know what, I didn't price it out. I just want to bring you out here and show you the belt since it was an obvious safety concern. So what I'll do, we have over 100 vendors that we use here at whatever, Honest One, and we'll shop around to get you the very best price. So would you like me to give you a ride home, or would you like to wait on that? Sometimes it's 50-50. They'll either wait or they'll say, you know what, can you give me a ride to the office? Because they know it's going to take longer. What did you do? You just bought yourself time. That allows you to get the rest of the inspection done after they're gone, which is the whole art of an oil change. If they say, oh, no, I'll wait on it, then we immediately get them the price. We get back with them. They're going to say, it's about 80, 90% of the time, they're going to say, yeah, go ahead and do it because they don't want to come back. And then you get them a ride. If they tell you on the front side that, oh, I'm not interested in that today, then you've just profiled that customer. You know that they're not going to be interested. If they're not interested in buying a safety item, they're not going to be interested in buying anything else. So now you know that the priority is to finish the inspection, document it, but that doesn't become your priority. Your priority is if somebody else comes in, you still want that priority to be the customer coming in the front door. You're still going to meet your timeline with them. You just know that they're not a buying customer. And it saves the technician from doing a lot of additional work, and it saves your manager from having to price out this great big estimate that you know the customer's not going to buy. We'll write up the estimate, but we won't get into pricing out every detail of the estimate. We will just document it on their invoice.
So that we can have declined services and be able to document
that.
Now, one of the things with the 15-15-15 is that when I did tell the customers we 15 minutes to the inspection, so when I come back to them for inspection results, they're not surprised. They're already expecting it, which is great. Now, one of the things that we are going to be working on, these new tools are going to be to help you with, is some of these obstacles that we're hearing when we're out in shops is why they can't seem to make speed of service happen. And one of the obstacles that people are coming across is that, okay, I'm trying to tell my technicians that when they get to the first safety or broken item, that they stop and then they come to the front. That's one thing that we're hearing. So we're going to be giving you new inspections and tools and forms to really lay out for the technicians, here's exactly what to check for, here's when to check for, and it gives them a better flow for the inspection, but still the complete inspection. So some of the things that I'm hearing, and I definitely want to say it's in my head, I had to transition in this industry too, because I went from transmission 100% to then transmission and general automotive to then from repairs down to, more maintenance and oil changes. So I've had to move with this shift. So I had to change my thinking too, such as one of the obstacles that I hear is, well, you know what, I can't go back to my customer multiple times. We've got to do a full inspection from beginning to end before I ever go up to the front, with those inspection results and present that to my customer. And before I present anything to the customer, whether it be a safety or broken item or the full inspection, well, I don't want to take it to the customer without knowing the numbers. I've got to work up a complete estimate, then give them the complete inspection overview with the complete estimate. And Greg, before I address how I've been speaking to people about what this is going to do for them, I want to let you address, because, I mean, we all hear this, and we can all understand it from the way shops were previously run, because it was a repair-focused industry, that those things made sense. But maybe that not so much anymore. So I want to let you address why those two things are really going to hurt you.
Well, because if you take that approach and, we've tried it, I think, and I would ask everyone, how's that working for you? That's not a salesperson. They don't understand the sales process. They're just going to spend all day documenting missed sales. Because one, by pointing out one item, you profile the customer, you get to know if the customer is even a buyer. And two, if you hit them in the face with a $2,000 ticket, they're coming in for an oil change, they're going to feel like you're ripping them off. They're going to go, my God, I come in here for an oil change and you hit me with $2,000. See, you don't ever piss off the customer when you don't even write an estimate. You just make them aware of something. See, that's very non-threatening to a customer. It's very threatening to have somebody come back to you and hit you with, you thought you drove the car in, and that's all customers think about is, well, my car drove in here, it must be fine. And then you hit them with $1,500 or $2,000 worth of repairs. Well, that just sends them into orbit. What they think, you probably, people that have taken that tact has probably heard customers say a lot, well, I'm probably just going to sell the car. Well, there's nothing wrong with a car other than it needs a great deal of maintenance, but the way that you presented it to a customer, you put them in a defensive position. We don't want to put a customer in a position where they think that you're taking advantage of them. Even though you're not, by writing up the whole estimate, the perception just doesn't feel very good. So by you taking a step back and going, hey, let me show you something, all you're doing is testing the water. There is nothing, no evidence that says that you can't go back to the customer more than once. And in fact, most salespeople would tell you, and people that, like myself, that spent really my life learning how to do this, is spoon feeding a customer is so much better than shoving it down their throat with a $2,000 estimate. So I would have those guys be open-minded and say, I would challenge you to try it this way and see if it worked for you, because we know the other way doesn't work. You are going to sell one in about every 15 great big tickets, but those other customers that you're hitting over the head with a great big ticket say, no, those people are absolutely not ever going to come back to see you, because they're going to feel like, man, those people at Honest One are ripping me off. I go in there and they hit me with a $2,000 estimate. That's why we created this, is so that we wouldn't upset customers. So hopefully that makes sense to you guys.
Yeah, and I don't think you could explain that part of it better. And the other reason why you have to do it this way is that, truthfully, we know it's not possible to get the car pulled around, do a complete bumper-to-bumper inspection under the hood, under the car, then write up a full estimate and do all of that and present it within 10 minutes or less. It's not possible. So if you're trying to do all of that and say, I can't get to 10 minutes or less, well, no wonder. Unless you're Superman and your team's Superman, you can't do all of that in 10 minutes or less. Beyond that, it's going to make it harder for you to sell at the end of the day. Now, the other thing that we want to clearly state is that many people think, well, if I do it this way, that means that we don't do full inspections. We don't do full inspections after that if the customer says yes, and we don't do full inspections after that and write it up if the customer says no. That is not what we mean. We just mean that as soon as we found something, we present it to the customer. It doesn't mean that as the customer, when I bring them back up to the front, I'll be happy to call some of my parts vendors and see exactly what we can do for you. I just wanted to show this to you first. And while we're doing that, you know what, John's over here and he's going to finish up checking out your vehicle and getting your oil change done for you. So I'll let the customer know we're actually going to be continuing your inspection. We're going to do the inspection. We're not leaving it off. So we don't want to give you that perception as well. So, Greg, unfortunately, we and hopefully we didn't get to everybody. The main thing that we got through today is that there is ways to make this possible, and really just trying to make everybody understand why is it so critical and why is it one of the critical aspects of the business, and how there are a few things that you can do to make it happen. Now, as we go into the next presentation that Greg and I are going to be doing, we're really going to dive into how we make all of this happen step by step. We're going to do what's going to happen if you don't make this happen. We're also going to talk about what this is going to be for you as far as higher GP and sales and technicians and making it step by step. We're going to talk about how you track this and show your employees, this is what happened before. This is how I motivate you. Here's the rewards that because we got to make sure it's accountable, and we give them rewards and get them excited about it. And we're going to talk to you about different ways to get them excited about it. And then slowly we're going to be rolling out the new steps that we have for you, the training documents, as well as the new inspection sheets for you. So we're going to be rolling out a lot of new stuff in the future. And Greg, hopefully we've gotten everybody, their appetites or make sure that everybody's hungry enough that where if they're not able to implement this today, if you say that today you're like, I want to implement this today, then please call me, email me, and I'll be happy to go ahead and start sending you the documents to start using and reviewing and talk to you about how to implement anything, or just to give you some tips and strategies on how to do this. Like I said, Greg will be at our convention this year, and he will actually be doing some small group sessions, and he'll actually be doing a large group presentation. But in our webinars, we'll be continuing on with this series, and the next step is going to be how we make it happen and start to roll out the steps for the front, the actual step-by-step of the front, and the actual step-by-step with the technicians. And with our next one, Greg didn't get to pick the date yet because he is opening up stores as well. But Greg's going to get back to us and let us know, so I'll make sure I roll it out. When I roll out that the webinar's been uploaded on the DocShop, I will let you know if the webinar's going to be hopefully on the 22nd, 24th, or 29th at 2 p.m. Eastern Time Zone once he's able to nail down that date. And, Greg, is there anything you wanted to say as far as wrapping all of this up? And sorry, everybody, if you have a question, please, let us know at the last minute or type it in, or else email, and I'm sure I can forward questions on to Greg, and he'd be happy to answer them if he needed to.
Yeah, I am looking forward to your convention, so look forward to meeting everyone out there and answering questions, and we'll be going over this some more, I'm sure, at that convention, is same as in April. So we'll get into it a lot more next month, but I thought we drilled the first part of it pretty good.
Yeah, hopefully at least we have buy-in now. If we don't have buy-in now, I don't know what else we can do.
Yeah, well, and I think that's it. Is the owner's got to want to do it, and they got to get their team motivated, or it's not going to work. And if you don't do it, then there's just no excuse. You can't complain that you can't keep technicians and you can't make money, because you got to do this if you want to make really good money in this industry. So I wish everybody the best of luck on getting this going. It's a lot easier even than it sounds.
Yeah. Well, Greg, thank you so much for your time, and good luck on your store audits next week that I know you're going to be doing, and on your store opening next week. So I know everybody on here can't wait to see the results.
Okay. Well, thank you, Reese. I always enjoy doing this. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Y'all have a good day.
Right.
Bye.